Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Very Good Engineering. This time, surprise, surprise, we don't have an engineer with us, but we have someone that is doing really cool work. I have my very good friend Murphy O'Rourke with us today. Murphy is a Chicagoan, not like me, I'm from Spain, but like he's nearby where I live. I've worked with him for many, many years. Actually, even outside VGV, we did a stint together many years ago at a local company here in Chicago called SPR. And now Morphe leads many of our most complicated programs when it comes to design. He's very advanced in the usage of AI-assisted technologies to drive design forward. So it's a real pleasure to have Murphy here with us. Hi, Murphy. How are you?
Hey, Jorge. I'm great, man. Thanks for having me.
Have a question for you. It's a little bit of a weird one, but like, is this your first podcast?
It is.
Ooh, nice. Well, I promise I'll be good with my questions today. And the first one is that so the design world, of course, has been taken over the years by Figma, but it seems like in the last couple of years, and as you can develop like your own Figma plugins and things like that, like you can actually add superpowers to Figma. How did you get started building your own Figma plugins?
So yeah, I mean, it is very true. The design world has been kind of inundated with new tools and techniques. So it's been, sometimes it's hard to keep up, but it's been a fun process of kind of keeping above water and moving towards more kind of custom workflows. So yeah, I mean, really, it got started because I think I'm probably a more technical designer than most. I kind of got my start, back at SPR. My first role there was actually doing the front end for a phone gap app. So before then, I just kind of known HTML, CSS, some JavaScript. Taught myself WordPress enough to get a couple clients and build my friends' portfolio sites and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I learned how to use Git. And I was really embedded with the mobile design team. So spent a lot of time focused on and experiencing like limitations and, things like that around the developer lens. And as I moved throughout my career, I've usually been one of the, few designers or really embedded with design teams, particularly on design systems. And again, just seeing pain points about, handoff, consistency, just the time it takes to move things around the system, not just in Figma, but in code. And a lot of these tools that are coming out, right? I see them in the marketplace. They're really meant to facilitate that handoff. So I was like, hey, I know a little bit of JavaScript. Maybe I can, take a whack at it. So did a couple of tutorials online, and then I started to kind of see these AI tools like ChatGPT and Copilot and things like that. So I was like, hey, let's give it a shot.
So I think everybody can understand at this point because it's been a standard in the industry for so many years what Figma is, right? It's like, hey, before you start building the code or things like that, you go to Figma, designing there like your user interface, your look and feel, and then you hand off that part to your web developers, mobile developers, like the people that will be working on the front end experience. So why Figma plugins? Where Figma plugins become important? Can you tell our audience what a Figma plugin would be and what its the potential?
Sure. So, Figma plugin is essentially a way to interact with the canvas, but also the data kind of behind the canvas. So it basically there's a Figma API and there's a Figma plugin API. The Figma API is great. It's more powerful, but it's also kind of locked behind different tiers of the subscription. So if you don't have like an enterprise or org plan, you can't access things like variables and stuff like that. So if you use the Figma plugin API, it gives you access to a ton of stuff. It's just very local to the browser or the app that you're running. So it uses your own like authentication to know that you're okay to interact with Figma. And essentially it's just some code, it's some JavaScript, sometimes it's HTML, and like a manifest file. I'm sure I'll show you some of this in a bit, but It's just a couple of code files that you can run JavaScript or TypeScript in, and then you can interact with all of the functions and essentially like the design data in Figma.
So in a way, would it be fair to say that it allows Figma users to customize it in such a way that they can make it their own, build custom workflows, personalizations that might be important for their teams or companies?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's where, Very Good Ventures is definitely looking at is not just taking what's out there, but building it ourselves. And I think that had been the approach, at everywhere I had been before with since we started leveraging Figma. I was like, somebody who's very technical will build a cool plugin, everybody uses it. You will define your own processes around the capabilities of that. But often it's like, well, I need, this plugin does 90%, but I need to do something a little different. And so previously you just work around that and maybe have, a plugin here, do some work, a plugin there, and, it works, but it's not tailor made to how you want to work. So I think that's where we're seeing, tools like this and being able to build our own is we no longer have to, fit in with the Joneses and work the same way that others do. We can build our own process, do our own things, and I mean, even adapt existing stuff that's out there fairly easily.
Something that many people might not know unless they work closely with you is that you've become a little bit of the VGV Figma slash plugin expert within VGV. What was the first plugin that you built within the VGV ecosystem?
So the first plugin I built was called Very Good Flutter Styles, and basically, the goal was to take a Figma component library that often has, you know, all of our theme colors. So that might be just kind of the standard, 30 or so, maybe one for light, some for dark, some gradients. But some projects can have hundreds of styles. Uh, then it would also take the text styles and it would export those as dark code. And this is something that, had kind of been a pain point uh, around handoff is that there's all of these colors and hex values to manage. How do they get from Figma into code? If there's 100 styles, that's 100 things that you got to move over. For textiles, like every textile has 10 properties, right? So that's however many more you have those. And then if things, change along the way, it's a ton of work to migrate everything. So yeah, essentially I started interacting with ChatGPT and I was like, I'm trying to build this. Give me a function to like get the style data. And then it would write a function. I would paste it into the JavaScript file. And I would just continue to kind of like copy and paste chunks and then, yeah, use my own very limited knowledge to wire up everything together. And then work closely with our, developers to say like, okay, how do we want this to look? What's going to live up to to our standards? And so, through collaboration there, I'm sure someone could have done this much faster than me, but I was adamant. I was like, I'm going to learn this. And, it was a cool experience. It took probably a month to get from when I first started to when we released it. And, pretty much all it does is you copy the code by clicking it, and then you have to paste it into your theme files.
When was this? Because I think that when we talk about AI and AI development, I mean, of course, there has been a big boom in the last, I don't know, like even 6 months. But I think you were working with ChatGPT a long time ago, not necessarily like recently.
It was, yeah, I had to look it up because it feels like only yesterday. Yeah, it was about 2.5 years ago. It was mid end of 2023 is
My
when we
goodness.
published this.
Yeah, I think back then, probably you would ask an engineer, like, will AI help you to build products? And they would say, like, and not really, only like the very early adopters. And meanwhile, there you are, like, actually shipping products, relying on AI. And of course, like, the technology, the way you get to the final outcome has changed a lot, right? Even probably
Absolutely.
the tools that you use today. I wonder if you still use ChatGPT for coding tasks. Something tells me that you might not. But still, like, you were very adventurous and brave, like taking that chance to say, like, hey, I have an idea. This is what I want to build. Whether I know how to code or not, like, I think I know enough to get me started. I'm gonna use ChatGPT to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite an experience, and I'm glad I stuck with it because there was a lot of times where I thought, this is I can't do this. It's too hard. Little simple things that my non-developer brain just couldn't grasp for constantly throwing a wrench in things. But I'm glad I stuck with it. Yeah,
You
and
know,
then
I'm
moving on past ChatGPT to like you said, wouldn't do that approach anymore. I don't really use chat for more than maybe helping define a plan to do a plugin or something like that. But moving into tools like Copilot or Cursor have really kind of elevated the experience and allowed kind of unlocked the craziness in my mind to be able to build a bunch of plugins.
I must confess that almost 20 years in the industry, there's still parts of JavaScript, whether I have AI or not, that I'm like, I don't know what's going on. But that's a different story. That's my own personal battle with JavaScript. So this is mid 2023, and now we are like in mid 2026, which seems kind of like crazy. Uh, and you've grown pretty much an entire ecosystem of like plugins for Figma that like benefit our team, right? Like our unicorns, our VGB team on a daily basis. Can you walk us through what that ecosystem looks like today? Like, do you want to share any examples that you're proud of or workflows that you think that are interesting?
Yeah, I'd love to.
That's why we're here.
All right. So yeah, I can go through. Um, I got a couple examples of kind of plugins that I've released on my own, as well as some of the plugins that we use here at VGV. But first, kind of how these relate into our primary workflow is often comes back to our template files and how a lot of these are about variables and variable management, documentation, and things like that. So kind of thought I should kind of walk through kind of how some of this stuff is set up so you'd maybe understand a little bit better about some of the things that are going on under the hood. Oh, right here is kind of an example of a template file that we have. And essentially we use variables to build our layouts. And these layouts are adaptive and they use modes in Figma to be able to flex things like color and size. And so you can see here, like this is an example of a phone, a tablet, a laptop, and a desktop. So these are all one component. And we use modes here to say, I want this to be that size, or I want all of these. I need to know what they look like in dark mode. So, all this stuff is very cool. We're doing lots of things around, responsive sizing, accessibility, even like, text scaling, global scaling, things like that. So, as you can imagine, our variable tables can be quite complex. So we have a theme that has light and dark, where we define, all of our colors. We use the kind of material approach for our template, but a lot of our clients use their own, they roll their own more custom color set. We have layout variables that for everything from phone, tablet, landscape, desktop. I mean, one of the cool things about Flutter, right, is it runs anywhere. So we could have something that might be a kiosk or something like crazy huge or small to support. So that can all be handled via variables. And we also leverage what we call like 3-tier architecture when it comes to how we're handling all of this. So we have the ability to say support multi-brand and to have responsive, scalable typography. So if a user has that flagged on their phone as extra large, we're able to take all of our designs and kind of mirror that and preview what that looks like so that we can design around that stuff. And then lastly, we use primitives for everything from color to font. And that's where kind of all these values are stored. So hopefully that gives you, kind of a quick idea of the file that we're working with here.
Mhm.
So one of the first I wanted to show was called locals only. And this is valuable because we use a template. And once you duplicate the template and you set it up for a client, it becomes detached from the source of truth. There's not really a way to make any, like pull in any updates because that's just not the way that it works in Figma. So in here, I you can see that this color scheme and everything is set up for like a wireframe. I pulled this in from a different file. So basically, it's kind of an example of like, this is our template. This is a new component from our template, and I want to bring it into this file that we have set up. So if I run locals only, it looks for basically the similar naming convention from our template. So I can analyze it, and it will tell me that, okay, there's 18 colors that match. There's 7 number variables that match. There's a color style in there and an effect. And so if I say go local, it should replace all of that stuff with the local variables here. So now I just mapped all of the color, all the colors, all the padding values and things like that from that external file, so that other template, to this file. So sometimes it takes a minute because Figma's got to think about stuff. So that's all mapped to local things. I actually built this for another purpose, which was to do kind of a similar exercise for branching. So
Mhm.
when you have branching, you can say, just like in code, I have a version of this file and I want to play around with something until I get it right. Um, the way that Figma publishes components, it kind of locks in these versions of color and type and stuff like that. So I needed to be able to copy a layout from one file into a branch, and I want to see that behavior. And the only way to do that previously was to manually go in and like override all the colors, all the variables, and things like that. Took a long time, so I was like, okay, there's this plugin idea. It allowed me to think differently about how to solve the problem, and so that's just one example. There, another one I created, and some of these are pretty, like, the idea is very simple. And I would have, I never would have been able to do this without AI. All of these concepts are like way too complicated for my brain to be able to pretend I could wire them up. But having the idea now is like, that's kind of all you need. Variable calculator. So for something we might want to do is I want to have numbers scale, and tablet is bigger than mobile and desktop is bigger than tablet. So if I open up variable calculator here, and you'll notice, some of these have icons. All of these are available in the Figma community, so they're available to anyone. I can pick, let's say, layout. So I can pick represent the collection, pick layout. I can pick a specific mode. So I want tablet portrait, and I want all those values to be, let's say, um, times 1.2. Let me make sure I'm doing the right math here. I'm not. It's in primitive number, so I want the medium. Medium is being used in tablet portrait. So actually I have to go back in and say primitive number. And I want the path to be medium. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically scoping what I am going, I'm scoping this function to say multiply everything by 1 times 2 to this specific group of variables. And this, and also I can do it by a specific mode. So if I do this, let's just make it really big so you can see it. So medium is now getting blown up by 2. And I could also do this for, let's say, primitive or alias type, because that is what I want to do. I want to be able to, um, like preview type at 200%.
Mhm.
So this is something where you have to refresh. A lot of these have simultaneously iteratively say like, I need a refresh button because I need to be able to
Yeah.
grab things that are new. And so I just want, everything. So I might just say this and calculate. So some of these updates take a bit longer because when you're interacting with like textiles in Figma, so it's a little frozen. It has to run through every instance that is in place before it will actually update.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I'm realizing, right, like in the same way that developers worry a lot about architecture, and architecture in a very simplistic way is code organization. I think something that we take for granted is that designing a good system is way more than just like the initial look and feel. Actually, in a project that operates at scale, having a well organized, easy to maintain Figma structure in this case, right? Something that like with very simple effort allows you to manage multiple styles, parameters, variables, and have everything organized. It's hard. It's not
Yeah,
an easy job, right? So sometimes we think of design as like, can you make this pretty? It's like, yeah, that's one part of the job and probably one of the most important parts, along with like make it accessible, make it like things like that. But like working at scale, it's really complicated. And this is where I see the value of some of these plugins.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of my time in systems, as you can tell, so that's why a lot of these are aligned to that kind of work. But yeah, it's keeping it, keeping it pretty, but keeping it maintained in the system at scale, like you said. It's a big challenge. So that's why tools like this template and all these plugins make, working in it and adapting it that much, that much faster, so that we can spend more time on, the look and aesthetic and how it also functions, right? So you'll see I added the tablet portrait here. So now that's scaled up, right? So all of the sizing scaled up. And now if I add an alias type of 200%, that button text is going to scale up.
Sweet.
Very, that kind of stuff used to take forever, because we would have, there's 106 number variables that we're trying to flex between. So you'd have to go through and just manually enter, you know, 3 becomes 3 times 1.08 or whatever that kind of formula is. Mode match is another one where you can follow a similar property or similar pattern where you take, I want to match tablet portrait to tablet landscape. And so I could take alias, I would take layout, and I would say I want portrait to be the source, and I want landscape to be the destination. And I'm just going to update the modes there. This might take another second because it's got typography and stuff to do. But essentially, it's just going to match all the values of tablet portrait to tablet landscape, allowing you to easily say, like, okay, now I have, if that was part of the requirement, that's now possible to do. So if I say tablet landscape, should be the same, right? So ways to do, a lot of automation, right? Another cool one is variables to text styles. And that will basically push variables from text objects into text styles. So there is this cool plugin that kind of got me, inspired by a lot of the concepts of like using names as a source of truth, called Styler. And what Styler does is it takes the layer name, and if that matches the text style name here, it will replace the text style. Or if it doesn't exist, it will create a new one, and you can do a lot of cool automation stuff on here. So the one thing that I think is not really maintained anymore, so this is pre-variables, is that when you create a text style with Styler, so right now I have a text style, it's all wired up properly using variables. If I were to update this using Styler, if I had to generate, it's going to say, oh, interesting, no change. Well, it should push new styles into, let me have to attach it first to that style. So updated one. Now if I open this up again, it blanked out all the variables. So variables are shown if this is like highlighted in a very subtle color. So it might not be very obvious.
Uh-huh.
We use Styler a lot for bulk editing across, BGB, but also for clients. So I basically wrote a plugin. I was like, if the name is the same, so essentially like if this is compatible with Styler and it has variables applied to it, then push those variables into, let's see, push there. So it will say like it found one style that matches. So it will tell you if it's matching or not. update styles, one text style updated. And now if I deselect and go to here, all of those variables are back in. So
Gotcha.
one client we have has the way that they kind of automate some of their generation. They have like 1,200 text styles to cover all these different responsive scenarios. So at some point, I had to do this manually for that. Uh, once that started to happen, I was like, okay, I can't do this.
But
I
if you
can
do that
definitely write a
manually,
plugin
I
for it.
bet that that's job security for life
I think I'd still be working on that if I hadn't written this plugin.
on the first update.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that people might not realize this part, right? But this starts this starts having big time savings and like productivity savings the bigger the scale it is. And especially for industries that they might be highly regulated, where like the UI, accessibility, there's I know that there's a lot of like other stuff that you've done, right? But like think about mission critical components like vehicles, airplanes, you call it like embedded systems, right? Uh this actually is very, very important because you might have multiple permutations, multiple variations that need to be tested out one single of them, right? So with this, you're just managing that level of permutations and manual control in relatively like a few clicks as opposed to just going one by one every single time.
Right. And the fact that it's automated, it's safer, right? It's more accurate than if I'm doing this 1,000 times, I am bound to misclick something, right? And that, so it provides kind of those guide rails and security that, okay, this is going to work unless it's totally wrong. So, and that usually comes out during testing, but right. Um, yeah, it's a huge time saver as well. So, I mean, I got a bunch to show. I don't want to, I don't want to go through, I think, all of these. I can show how very good Flutter Styles
Well, I would love
works.
to see that one.
Yeah. So in this file, there's our standard text styles, right, for material. We don't use really color styles anymore except for gradients. So, you know, it will still work, but it will mostly work for the text styles. So very good Flutter styles. So here's the UI, looks just like that. So it says there's 4 color styles. So if I open this folder, there's just these 4. It's not going to show up one of them because this auto tint is kind of a crazy style and it doesn't, it's not real. So right here, I can go to, let's copy our text style. So just copied it to the clipboard. And if I go into VS Code and do a new file and just paste it in here, this is the output of that. So we've got our kind of commented out, you know, pre, where the code comes from. So a link to the plugin. It's got the standard like import our widgets, and then it goes through and it has the app text style class. And for each text style, there's a huge amount of comments that say what it is, the font size, in pixels, so that developers can know like what it was designed at, and then all of the properties that it entails. And then when it declares those, it declares them in the exact way that Flutter needs, or that we use it in our Flutter code.
I remember the first time, I think you were working with the team. We can say the project. I think it was JSX. You were working with Oscar and Anna in that project. The first time that they saw this, they were like, holy, I'm not going to say what came next, but they were like their minds were blown, right? Like I think that all of a sudden they realized like, hey, we can start treating Figma as a source of truth that can spit out reliable dark code for managing again like our theme, textiles, like a lot of those things that are like very important for visual fidelity, but they're also very tedious to maintain or change. All of a sudden now that collaboration becomes much, much more closer and very standardized across projects. And this gave our developers the opportunity to have a more predictable and more familiar pattern to implement in their projects.
Yeah, for sure. And throughout that project and most other projects, is as we're building out the designs, things change, and so being able to previously before this, it's like, okay, well, this font style changed in these ways. Again, oh, I forgot that this one changed too. So now instead of, relying on, manual communication and ways to flag things, it's like now somebody can just, okay, here's the new version of the textiles, update it, and the devs could see on the diff like what changed, and it's good to go.
Sweet.
So, and actually, oh yeah, so you'll see like one style is not supported, and so I could check the console, and it will tell me maybe, yeah, Figma auto tint doesn't work, and this was better. I could probably say why in the console, but that's the cool thing. Is like this is the Figma desktop app, which I believe is required to run plugins, but it's essentially just an Electron app that runs JavaScript, and so it's just like in the web. You can see the console, you can see all of the network stuff. So yeah, it's cool.
So you mentioned
And
at the beginning that the first plugin took you about 8 months of back and forth. It wasn't necessarily like working a month full time. It was more kind of like working here and there in a few occasions with ChatGPT. How long does it take you now to build a plugin from idea to something usable?
yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on the scope, right? The scale, the complexity, um, and all that, right? But I think typically to just get like a proof of concept, like I have an idea, I need to see if it works. I don't care if it doesn't do all these things. I just want it to do one thing. I don't care what it looks like. I mean, you can do it in 15 minutes to an hour, depending on what kind of method that you use. So like when I started, I would use Cursor, and it's more of an iterative process. Like here's my idea, build it, and then it would build it, and then I would test it, and I was like, okay, this doesn't work. Let's do this. And you know, even a year ago, I would have to like go into the code, and I would have to look at properties. So I built this click to console plugin, which helped me. So if you basically, it tells you what to do, click on something or select something, and then open up the console. And so I can click on this button, and it will show me all of the properties that it has. So then I would use that to say, okay, like something's not coming through. Like here's the structure of this specific thing, and uh, kind of use that to help debug. And yeah, so I mean, it would still take a little bit more time because it's iterative. But I'd always get there in a significantly shorter amount of time.
So
But
just
now
so
with
I'm
tool,
clear, you're building tools now to help you build tools. You know that we're hiding in the engineering team, right?
I think I'm almost there. Uh, not just kidding. But yeah, so it's been cool to be able to do this kind of stuff. Is like I've always admired the work that engineers do. It's just like you know I'm more of a design focused person, but now like with all these tools, like these roles are becoming more interconnected, and if you can speak to a chat interface in a way and like kind of know the techniques to kind of get it to do what you want, and all that, like anybody can do almost anything now.
Yeah, I mean, you know that internally we've been talking a lot about the trust and taste framework, right? So with the
Hmm.
right tools, like the boundaries that existed before about like, hey, this is what product does, this is what design does, this is what engineering does, they're becoming much more like blurry and intertwined, which I think it's going to improve collaboration a lot. Like all of a sudden now we're going to be able to pair much faster to truly iterate together, right? And I think there's going to be also this element of like, yeah, you might have an engineer being able to prototype on a design tool, or you might have a designer feeling comfortable like, hey, this design is ready to go. I can actually take the first pass on the coding side. And that back and forth, I think that it's gonna help us truly, I think for the first time in history, to become like real like product producers, as opposed to like I'm the product, I'm the designer, I'm the engineer, and that trifecta together is what makes a product at the end of the day.
Hmm. Yeah, it's always better when ideas can come from anywhere, and yeah, the ability for now anyone to kind of get into any role and express themselves in a way that is more visible and I think useful to the trajectory and the kind of the pace of the product is always going to be better, right? Because it's great that I can jump into code, but I don't know if it's good and if it should make it its way into the app. But I could make a prototype and then work more like work with the dev to refine that and get it into a better place. And likewise, like a developer can get into a design tool and you know whether that's something external to Figma or they're using like the Figma console MCP to play around with something using a existing system. That's very cool.
Yeah, I have
Uh,
found myself prototyping more than ever just because the cost to produce that prototype and the time has been reduced significantly. So now, like, I've been thinking almost as like I can build like disposable software that may be very important and very valuable, but just for a very specific moment in time. And then I will need it again. Like, especially like complex visualization, data gathering, things like that. Like for me, I see myself like building stuff like that all the time. It's like it has nothing to do with building a product. I just need it for my day-to-day operations.
mhm. Yeah, you can build your own dashboard for something, or even a lot of these. One of the cool things I like that I'm seeing a lot is the ability to do something like create custom shaders or these really cool like interactive models that you would it requires a lot of or previously required a lot of knowledge and a lot of time to dedicate to like learning how to do that is becoming a lot easier to just like, not that I even need to use a shader, but I want to see what this looks like with a shader. Like, there's a lot of products or projects that we've worked on in the past where I'm like, man, if we would have only had the
Yeah.
tools that we have now, that would have ended up, you know, 10xing the output because like not just like the speed, but also just like the effects and the things that we could have done because they would be more accessible to to me or to people on the team versus oh, well, we can't do something like that because we don't have the time to or the budget to dedicate to that part of the project.
I'm very glad that you mentioned shaders because I had to. It's one of those topics that since I started almost with Flutter, it's like you realize what's the painting potential of Flutter. So you're like, okay, shadows are going to be very important here. And throughout the years, only a few people, and some of them that were in the team, became really experts with shaders. And I would see what they do, and I would look at the code. And like, I don't understand a single thing of what it's doing. And I would ask them for resources to learn, and they would point at books and whatnot, and I would be, I still don't know what it's doing. Like it's way above my level of intelligence or like graphics knowledge. And now with AI, like I was able to kind of like be like, explain this like if I was a 3-year old. Eventually I had to reduce to 2 years old. I think that that's where like things started to click for me. But all of the time I was able to understand shaders. I was able to build small demos. I was able to explain even complex shaders like this is what I want. Maybe I don't know if it's written properly or not, but like it's doing what I expected, and that's very powerful. I'm very curious to ask you, what do you use today to build plugins? Like, have you changed your technology stack? Do you have any starter kits that you use because now you've realized like there's always like a common pattern?
But yeah, so I use primarily the tools that I use are Cursor and Claude Code, and I also have like you mentioned, I have a starter kit. So apologies for the infinite mirror. I have this on GitHub. It's a public repo, but it's something that I usually use, or I'm thinking about maybe not. How if this is even necessary anymore. But this project is basically the couple of files that you need to build a plugin, as well as some additional like, kind of markdown files and Claude and Cursor rules or skills. So you'd have in the code JS. Let me just open this in GS Code or Cursor. Let's do Cursor. Sorry to have it open. It has a code.js file that just has kind of placeholder content. These are just
Uh-huh.
common functions. They're all and they're all hidden. It's just got a basic, you know, selection change. A lot of the stuff that is commonly used in plugins, so logins onto the console, posting messages between the UI and this code file, catching errors, things like that. If I open up like some of the rules, there's a project rule for Cursor. There's a plugin skill for Claude. There's stuff like create a README. So it's once I'm done with the code, I'm like, run this skill, create README, and update that README so it's not the starter template anymore, or create a community description of the capabilities and the features of the plugin, because all that stuff takes time and effort. And so, you know, Claude honestly knows what's going on under the hood about what's happening in the app or the plugin more than me. So it makes sense to just have all that in there. And so, typically if I'm using Cursor, which I like just for kind of simplicity's sake, right? You can just say, here's an idea and build it, or go into plan mode and tell me what you're going to do and maybe ask me a couple questions and then build it. And I, hardly ever have, feedback for it. I just, you know, I think the way that I started it was very iterative. So I'm just like, let's just run it. We'll test it. We'll just continue to go. But now I'm finding more like using Claude Code, where if I open up a project, I'm definitely going into plan mode. I will take like, here's an example of a plugin I was recently working on where I'll see if we'll run this in the background and see what happens. So I want to create a plugin to build basically a color contrast grid. There's a couple plugins I haven't shown. If we still have time, I can go through some of these more, VGV internal ones, right? But basically take a color contrast grid, and that's in this link, and just describing what I want to happen. So typically, now I will go into plan mode. I'll paste this in. I will point it at the file or open the Figma console MCP, which allows it to, so it uses this plugin called Bridge. I did not make this. But this allows you to access the Figma console MCP to access the file via AI, and it can pull all this context from the file. So I'm just going to show you an example of like this. I can point it at this frame, and it can go in to the layers, and it knows like the layer structure. It knows all the colors and everything that's associated with it.
Uh-huh.
If I describe that, it would take a long time
Yeah.
to do. So I can, paste this all in and just say, I'm just going to go auto. We can see what happens, in the background. But yeah. So with Claude, I would say, let's go into plan mode. Probably put it on a let's see, Opus, right? Opus to plan, Sonnet to build, and I would just let it go until it does the plan, and then build the plan after clearing context. And with Claude Code and plan mode, it's like 90% of the time it one shots the idea, and it does. It will even think of stuff that I didn't think about or hadn't considered. So the expectations are high, and the output is usually very high as well.
No, this is great. I do think that AI assisted engineering started to become something serious when like Cursor and then like Claude adopted like the plan mode, because we've seen like huge improvements starting with a plan implementation. That pretty much is what allows you to write like deep, detailed, tedious prompt that at the beginning you don't have, right? So that's fantastic. Man, I gotta say that I'm very impressed with the whole setup that you have here. Every time I see not only you, but like the whole BGV design team is like, watching wizards do their work. It's amazing. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all these. Um, is there anything else that you wanted to show today?
Yeah. So, and apologies if you could. I have this app called Codevator, and it's playing a sound while the AI runs, the agent runs, and so I can know to like walk away, and then when it stops, it comes back. And while we do that, so yeah, I guess one last thing I wanted to talk about was, you know, I didn't really get a chance to share some of the internal tools
Mhm.
that we use. Um, but it's a lot around like very quickly reskinning an app. So if we, this is our demo app, and I want to use Very Good Ventures colors. So there's a process that we use, or plugins that we use to generate our color palettes that align with material, and then there are, once that's done, we need to be able to update our documentation that is used for not just developers, like there will be product owners that need to come in here, just an artifact that we want to update. So there are ways that plugins that we've built to automate that a lot more. So if I say like Very Good alias, I can take our brand. I select our brand as our destination. These are all of our semantic colors. The source would be primitive color. And let's just say I already got the colors in here. So Very Good blue, we'll take surface to Very Good. Where's gray? Gray. And then let's say error is Very Good pink. So what this is going to do is it's going to go into our variables, and in brand, our colors reference. So surface references this like neutral set of colors, and primary references this teal set of colors. So I can update the variables, and it's going to run through, and it's going to basically remap that teal group to VG blue, and
Really
it's
blue,
going
yeah.
to remap surface to gray. So now you see in the
There you
background,
go.
like, oh,
Yeah.
now we have Very Good Ventures branded experience. And then with a color scheme, we want to update this to, what's this one called? Swatch, right? Very Good swatch. Let's see. So it looks for a specific structure of, let me pull this open, a specific layer structure
Uh-huh.
that's in the selection. So it says, I found 61 swatches, and there's some couple of like different formatting things that you can do. But now I can just run this, and it's going to update. This is using theme primary. The source is palette VG blue solid 40, and that's the hex value. So, it's doing that 61 times. No good. Doing it automatically in 1 second. Way better. Contrast audit is another one. Like, you talked
Yeah.
about before, the importance of, let's see if I can just quit this and it will kill it.
Yeah, this is the one I think that has blown my mind the most. Because I know in which system you're using this, and I know how tedious and painful that was in the past. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden, with this plugin, you were able to solve like days worth of work, if not more, into just a few minutes.
Yep. Exactly. Like I've done this for many clients. And it basically, you want to ensure that your background color and your foreground color are accessible. And you often have a few different foreground colors and a few different background colors. And so you want to check that across like all of your components, right? Your buttons, you know, everything. So again, I built this kind of structure and this plugin, Contrast Audit. So when I select this, it's going to look for these relationships and layer names that are like foreground, background, metadata, stuff like that. And so in this one in particular, I can just find the audit row. So there's 8 rows here. And what it's going to do is it's going to compare these two values, spit me out the ratio, and then tell me if it passes for text or for small and large text. So run contrast audit. And so you can see like just like that, super, super quick. So I can do the same thing for like all of these, find audit rows. The bigger the selection, the longer it takes. And there's definitely some like recursive selection happening here. So, yep, 178 rows, count 4 issues because of these top headers, right? They don't conform to the pattern, but it will just skip those. And so I can run it, and it will just, it just runs through. It's cool to watch when you're doing it on a big one. So it will just like run through from top to bottom and give you that output. And so you can easily see like, okay, I can't use theme on surface disabled on theme surface, but that's okay because to say it's disabled. So you can find, you know, obvious patterns or things that like that these are okay, or like outline, outline passes for small or large text, which is good. It doesn't need to pass for text. So as long as we're not using outline for text, that's good. So yeah, I mean, and another cool thing it does is it will take like if it uses transparency. So that's common on like a secondary button, right? It might be a background that has um, an opacity, and then so you would say, I want to see what that looks like on every surface. I don't know if I have an example of that, but the plugin will calculate like this transparency on this color gives us like it flattens it and makes the hex color to be able to check. So it's like even more powerful than you could do on your own, or it's so much less work. So, uh,
That's
yeah, I
insane.
mean,
That's crazy.
and last thing I wanted to show was because, so, as we've kind of gone and focused a lot on Claude and Claude Code is, trying to leverage skills. And so, I showed you a bit about, the steps it takes to customize this layout. Right. And so at one point I was like, okay, let's make a skill and we'll just like have it interview the user and you can enter all this stuff in and to customize the template. And it worked. It just took my entire session data worth of tokens. So I was like, okay,
Worth it.
that's maybe not the most wise use of this. Not that you do it all the time, but like that's a lot of resources to do. So then I was like, okay, what if I just make a plugin? So I took basically the skill and that approach and what is this one called? VGB. Did I rename it? Variable kit. Is that called now? Maybe I need to open it up because I think I renamed it recently. So in development,
Wait, you only created all those like 127? No.
yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, you can see these are all my all of my
Experiments.
local plugins. Let's see where that is. Figma variable kit plugin. I think maybe because I recently moved it to. We open in Finder. Figma VGB variable kit. Okay. There we go. Very good design kit. There it is. Very good design kit. So I basically turned that process uh, and skill into a plugin. So I can say begin. It validates that all of the collections are structured in the way that I need. And then
Uh-huh.
you can go through and you can manually copy and paste all of your brand colors in. It
Uh-huh.
even takes into account multi-brand. So if there's more than one brand, it will like ask you
A
for a
different
lot of these
brand, yeah.
steps again. So you can use, I had it update this to be used like a native color picker. You can skip any steps. So you can just focus on, I want to update colors. I want to update font families. I want to update the type scale. So the base size, and then take a scale ratio. So these are very common, like how you scale type from body to headline or title to headline to display. So, a lot of like best practices and cool things that again would take a ton of time to like manually figure out and update.
Yeah, they're
Um,
embedded right there.
Number scale ratio. So how you want things to scale between phone and tablet and desktop and things like that. So all of that stuff gets put together and then you review your changes. So I haven't done anything yet. This often takes a few minutes to run because
Yeah.
it is doing so much. But it will update the file. You know, it will totally retheme the file. It updates all the text styles. It updates all of the text sizes, the accessibility
Uh-huh.
sizing, all that stuff. Just in using the plugin. And the best part is that it doesn't use any tokens. You can run it again and again and continue to just if I
It's
need to tweak the
old money
colors, I can do that.
traditional automation.
Yeah.
Sweet. Murph, I feel like I could be talking to you for hours just on this whole idea of the very good design kit. Seems like you might even be like its own episode because this is like the starting point for a lot of our work, right? Many of our projects, once we do research, user interviews, brand discovery, and whatnot, the first point is not the code. The first point is like, let's get the starting point on Figma. So then everybody knows what are like the next steps. We start building the design system, but like everything starts there. And setting up that part of the process in the past was very manual, very error prone. Every developer or every designer might have a different way of doing it, and therefore, especially as you go through like multiple projects, like you feel a little bit lost. And right now what you added was like standardization and structure without losing flexibility. If any, I would say that you've added more flexibility. You're just doing it at scale, which is fantastic. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, a little bit more complexity too. I know that's something we run into. It's hard to do with the template. Is like, how do you support everything if we have a pretty simple app? Like, this is overkill. So I think their idea. It's great because like if I have an idea, now I want to, let's say, add a step to like, I don't want half these colors, and I don't want it. It doesn't need to be responsive. Like,
Yeah.
you could just add that as steps, and it will go into the file, and it will wipe out all that stuff you don't need. So
Yeah,
it's
no,
not
I
even
mean
like a disappointing anymore. It's like, oh, this is, it's another cool enhancement.
that's exactly what happens to us on the engineering side as well. Like when you need to build something that again, like it's gonna go to millions of users, it's gonna have a very thorough like testing phase, or like it's going through uh like multiple loops of compliance and accessibility. You need every single detail to be spot on. But sometimes you just need to build a prototype. I just need to gather feedback. So having different options to kind of like move fast without losing efficiency. Yeah, of course, like the more complex the problem, usually the more sophisticated your tooling is, but not necessarily that means that it's hard to do. It's just like you just need to put the creativity to solve that problem. Awesome. I've had a wonderful time, but before I let you go, and actually, I must confess that this is my last event of the day, and tomorrow I will enjoy a sweet vacation in Spain. But before we do that, it's time for our lightning round. I don't know if you know what this is, but it's just like short and sweet questions that I don't want you to think too much. I just want you to say whatever comes to mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's
All
do it.
right, let's do it. Our first question is, what's your favorite Figma plugin that you didn't build?
I would probably say Styler. It does its job. It kind of inspired a lot of the way I think about plugins, and I've definitely, borrowed, we'll say, some patterns from it. And it's one of my favorites. Simple, does the job well, can't be beat.
Sweet. Cursor, Copilot, Claude Code. If you only had the ability to keep one, which one would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, Claude Code, in my mind, is more, it's more than a model, right? I think it's by far the most powerful tool out there. The cursor's always got a special place for me, and a lot of the work I do doesn't need to be that complex. I found myself even now like kind of moving back to cursor when I need to just kind of get up and go, and it's a little bit faster, and you could still use Anthropic models, but I would probably say Claude Code because it's just it's magical what it can do.
Now that we're moving away from IDEs a little bit and it's everything is a little bit more terminal based, that sweet spot in my heart is for Sublime Text. Uh,
Yeah.
no Visual Studio Code, no IntelliJ product. Like Sublime was, especially for my Ruby on Rails days, was like that perfect text editor that just go fast. What's the one Figma plugin that doesn't exist yet but should?
That's a good question because there's almost a plugin for everything. I think I've even built some where after I was done, I look back, I'm like, oh, there's a plugin for that already, but it doesn't work the exact way I need it to. I would say probably something around documentation of like a design system, and particularly like let me visualize a way to show all of the components that make up a Figma design system. So whether that's in one file, whether that's across, every component's got its own file, something that allows just better and clear documentation that you can share. Uh, because I haven't seen anything like that. I think there's some limitations around what you can do with the plugin that may make that a little difficult. That might be more of a Figma API thing, but I think that direction of plugin is a little lacking.
Gotcha. Talking about Figma APIs, what's the strangest, like weirdest API quirk that you have encountered?
I would say the strangest, and you probably would be like, "Oh, that's obvious," because it's a common code thing. When you're looking at a property, often for like rotation, for example, or a lot of times with numbers in Figma, the UI it shows it 0, but when you look at the property, it's like negative 0.0001 or E16 dot for a bunch of numbers.
That
I don't even know
JavaScript
what that
for
means.
you, baby.
So those have been the most frustrating to run into. But I will say the biggest constraint is you cannot move variables across collections.
Mm.
They're set. They're stuck. I've tried.
No, after all you've shown me today, I can understand why that bothers you. What's the design tool that you bring back from the dead?
I would probably Flash. I loved Flash.
Wait,
It was
Flutter is
great.
a Flash.
It was yeah. Well, no, yeah. I mean, you can use tools like Rive, probably better than Flash.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time, really early, probably more in college, doing some, silly stuff with Flash. But I always remember the games were the best. And then
Man,
Steve Jobs killed all my favorite games.
my first job was as a Flash developer.
Yeah, yeah,
It was just a short period of time, so I didn't get too deep into learning Flash, just enough to know that it's like, I like the outcome, I hate the process.
yeah. Same.
What's the plugin that you're most proud of and why?
The plugin I'm most proud of would probably be, it's called Control R Rename Variables. It it I think it was my first probably like really unique take on a plugin. So right right now Figma offers the ability to like search through your variables, which is fairly new. But my plugin kind of like it had that function before Figma did, so I thought that was cool. But I basically borrowed the pattern they have for
Mhm.
renaming layers, uh, and that you can kind of search and scope your variable search. You can say like replace all things that are background to BG, or you can number things up and down. And I really borrowed like their exact pattern for doing that, but I did it for variables. It was it was still a bit early on, so it was probably a big achievement for me personally. It was very complex. It actually got some traction on some like design blogs I'd never even heard of, which was cool. And shout outs from inspirational folks in the design community. So probably the most proud of that one.
Sweet. And this was not part of my plan for the lightning round. You gotta share with me your ghosty setup. It's pretty cool. It's pretty dope.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I once I got that going, they got shaders going on. I got that a message of the day, animated messages of the day, which I had Claude do because I don't even know what's that written in shell script. I don't even know.
Sweet. Well, this is the end of our conversation today. Murph, I'm pretty sure that this is the first, but not the last, because I think that you have a lot of ideas that are worth sharing with the world. And as you keep doing amazing work as part of our daily work with VGB, part of your personal interest, which we haven't even talked about today, but I bet that we can feel like 2, 3, or 4 more podcast episodes Uh, so I'm just very glad that I was able to interview you for the first time.
Yeah.
Uh, Now the world knows one of our rock stars at BGB, and thank you so much for joining us today. And for
Yeah.
our
Thanks,
listeners
Jorge.
today, thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Cheers all.